I'm super excited to have a conversation about the state of Black arts across the country. And as I lean in with, of course, excitement and concern, knowing that many Black artists and Black arts organizations are actually not thriving in their fullest potential because of the same systems for which we are living and existing in, creating in, and also finding breath. And so, this conversation with my esteemed and excited guests will be having a very frank and honest conversation about that particular state of the sector. But we'll also be sharing thoughts, ideas of how we move it forward into the future, and also what are some good examples that we see, possibly from Black organizations or within the sector itself, from artists that we would want to move forward into the future. Actively participating in the session, though will not be speaking, will be Alison Roll, and Alison will be our archivist, our sessional archivist. She is focusing primarily on also Black arts expressions. And so I thought it was interesting to see and hear at the end of the session what information Alison would be gathering about the conversation itself. Again, I see tons of colleagues, friends who've been part of CPAMO's work in advancing this work. I see funders. I see so many people here for whom CPAMO has intersected with, and I'm really grateful and honored that you're here with us in this particular conversation. My guests include Alison Roll. She's an award-winning artist, scholar, program designer specializing in the composition of projects by and for community. As a research and project coordinator with Outside Arts, Alison plays a senior guiding role on initiatives such as archiving Black futures, shaping program design and strategic direction. Another of my esteemed guests, Claudia Pensa-Bowen, who works with Black Artists Networks in Dialogue Band, where she's co-director and director of operations. Claudia focuses on fostering meaningful connections and sustainable practices within the arts community. She grew up with an appreciation for the role of art and creative practices in exploring identity and forming community. Onika Powell, who I will selfishly say and will always champion as a student of mine many, many moons ago with Scarborough Urban Youth Dance Ensemble. And I want to put Scarborough's SCIDE, as we would call that organization, out there because SCIDE is no longer, but was an instrumental player in so many artists who exist in dance within the city today as a community-led organization. Onika Powell is an artist, educator, and cultural leader with over 25 years of experience in the arts sector, working across the Caribbean, Europe, Asia, and Africa. She's dedicated to using the arts for mentorship, civic engagement, and community development. She's formerly the artistic director of Vibe Arts, and she's currently the senior manager of outreach and access for the Toronto Arts Council, leading the Black Arts Grant Program. Welcome, Monica. I have with me a seventh generation African Canadian, Thandiwe McCarthy, a spoken word poet and writer. As a culture correspondent for the Maritime EDIT, he spotlights Black community leaders and artists. He's a co-founder of the New Brunswick Black Arts Alliance and advocate of the recognition of August 1st as Emancipation Day and an organizer for the New Brunswick, Emancipation Celebration event. Thandiwe was recognized by the CBC in 2023 as one of the 20 Black changemakers in Atlantic Canada. Thandiwe, welcome. Last but not least, another dear colleague of mine out west. See, Canada's big enough. And the thing is that things are happening across the entire spaces as in Black arts that is not actually amplified nationally within the sector. And so I want to also, Wumni, I'm going to get your name wrong. I tell you right now, Jamaica accent will come out. Wumni Idwo is an award-winning I just know as Wumni. I don't know. I've never pronounced her last name. Is an award-winning multidisciplinary artist, filmmaker, educator, and entrepreneur dedicated to amplifying African, Caribbean, and Black communities. She has led Wozo Africa Music and Dance Theater Inc. for 19 years and founded the Black Arts and Culture Council, BACC, in 2021. Wumni helped inaugurate Alberta's first Black History Month in 2017 and received a House of Commons certification of recognition in 2018. Wumni, welcome. I will ask of all panelists the first question to just dive into this conversation around the state of Black arts. And it starts with asking the question, what projects are you most passionate about that advance the work of Black artists, communities, and organizations? And I will invite Wumni to speak.
Yes, thank you so much, Kevin, and welcome everyone. In terms of this answer, I would say the Black Arts Development Program is a program that I'm very passionate about. The program came from I guess, erasure of Black people in specific styles of dance, such as tap, jazz, samba, salsa, Afro-Caribbean, Afro-Cuban, etc. We had this production every year for about 7 years from 2018 called Unganisha Explore Connect Dance. And that production focuses on dance genres that came from enslaved Africans that are now known as modern styles of dance. And when we would have this Black History Month production on stage in Calgary here, a lot of people would complain after our, baseline survey on how did you enjoy the performance, that where are the Black people on stage? It's Black History Month. There are all these nine genres of dance. Where are the Black people in those genres? And we started to think, where are the Black people? And we knew why. So we decided to create this Black Arts Development Program, 6 different components, dance being one, to be able to support the involvement of Black youth and adults in specific styles of dance. And we've had really great success with 28 dance in genres and 24 dance instructors, Kevin being one, in 2023. And we're so grateful to be able to have access to basically dance instructors from all over the world come to Calgary and stay with us for 3 weeks for our 3 weeks dance intensive and give the youth age 10 and up to how old? I think we had a 64-year-old adult join the program, and it's free. So they're not paying for the access to very potent and inspiring dance instructors. And they are in that space with other Black people who are from African or Caribbean descent. And they're learning genres of dance from the Caribbean or the African continent that really gives them the origins of where that dance came from, why do they do those dances, who does those dances, when do they do those dances. Very crucial information is being passed down by this generational wealth being dispensed to the participant. And at the end of the 3 weeks, the participant gets an honorarium for the development. So it's been a very successful program. And we did that because of the need, which we didn't have, which was more Black people in those genres of dance.
Thank you so much. And I love the idea of being responsive and the responsiveness that I think is a thing within Black arts across the country, is that we could strategize, but we have to be responsive to the needs of our community because the community is actually whom we're upholding and supporting. And so it's really great to hear your responsiveness. I wonder, Thandiwe, if you would jump in and chime in to share some of projects that you're passionate about or things that you know about your work out east in your community.
Yeah, thank you for having me here, Kevin, and the organization. Something I'm really passionate about is the Still Here initiative. We find that a lot of people forget Canada doesn't end after Quebec, And those that make it past Quebec, they seem to go right to Halifax and miss New Brunswick. So we too have been dealing with this. What is the Black heritage for New Brunswick and the Black communities? And so we started this Canada Council funded project to go to 15 Black New Brunswick families who can trace their history back to the 1800s, who still have the deeds for the lands in Willow Grove and Elm Hill in these areas that are as old as Africville, because this was all Nova Scotia once upon a time. And we used poetry, we used photography, we partnered with the provincial archives to archive these family stories because there's a history of our oral history and our shared memorabilia not being respected in the archives of the federal and provincial government. And so I had a scanner and I went to these homes and scanned in the documents. And this project is going to be a book with a legacy partner that's been the oldest independent publisher in Canada. It's going to be an exhibition that gets shown in the Beaverbrook Art Gallery. All of the families get their pictures back. All of the family representatives from 15 families got honorariums for getting and gathering their families together. So the family representatives of each family was paid. We're putting on a giant festival this summer to bring the families together and take one final giant picture. I'm calling it the largest picture of Black New Brunswickers ever taken. And to get them to share that oral history and bring the heritage and community together because if we don't do it now, it's just going to be lost. So this is really weaving art as the vanguard of starting the conversations that we kind of want to continue decades in the future.
Thank you so much. And what I'm loving is the histories of Black bodies in this country for a very long time, right? I'm mindful and I'm really passionate about how do we begin to amplify Canadian Black stories, which is not like American Black stories. And so as we look at some of the things that we see also arriving in certain spaces, there is one I was just like, but these are all Black can American companies that you're profiling in Black History Month, where are the Canadian Black arts organizations and stories that could be amplified by that
Right.
particular organization? But you know me, I'm gonna let Black History Month done first before I send that email that says, just mindful that you're showcasing and many things that you're showcasing are American, but what is the stake as it relates to the Black arts practices and celebration of Blackness in this particular country? So thank you so much for that. Um, I'll go to Onika.
Hello, everyone. And of course, thank you again, Kevin and CPAMO, for having me here. I'm most proud of just being involved in the Black Arts program at Toronto Arts Council. I say that lately as involved, but managing. Prior to coming here last year, April, I was actually on the advisory committee for it. So having a seat on one side of the table and then, being on the inside, it's beautiful to be a part of this journey to, you know, be a steward and a voice for artists, arts organizations, and just speak to some of the barriers, just having an inside person for a lot of Black artists within Toronto. And yeah, I love the program. It's designed by us. It's designed for us. So, a lot of the ways that which traditionally how we apply to grants, writing a in-depth application at Toronto Arts Council. We provide options of if you want to do an audio application, if you want to do video, like just looking at what barriers exist and coming up with a solution together, community centered and just approaching those barriers together. I find it very fruitful. It doesn't feel like work every day. It feels like, a purpose that, working towards just eliminating a lot of challenges and barriers. But of course, you're working within a system, so it's a journey.
Yes, and the embedding of challenges within the system, whatever those
Yes.
systems are, laptop, digital transfer and spaces like this one, they
Yes.
all, they have those embedded things that challenges some folks and some people and could actually challenge Black people, Black artists and arts organizations
Hmm.
differently because of that. Thank you so much. And what I really love there is the conversation around Thandiwe's conversation around oral history and traditions, and really understanding that some Black traditions will actually exist primarily through oral tradition, through oral ways of communicating, rather through written ways of communicating. And so that for me becomes an accessibility that you're actually honoring and thinking about through that
Hmm.
particular program. So thank you for that. Yes, I will go to Claudia.
Hi, everyone. As Kevin mentioned, I currently work at BAND, which is Black Artist Networks and Dialogue. Um, I think one of the projects or initiatives that BAND has been doing that I'm passionate about is really related to our name and kind of the core of what our purpose is, and it is related to dialogue and networks. So dialogue within networks, but also dialogue across networks. So over the past couple of years, we've been hosting Black arts and culture organization convenings, thinking about it's been centralized to Toronto and Ontario for now, but hopefully will continue to grow. And the purpose has been thinking about the best methods and strategies for sharing resources, sharing skill, sharing knowledge, kind of with the idea of how can we collectively strengthen the viability of Black arts organizations and build that extensive and sustainable ecosystem for arts organizations and art service organizations to be responsive and impactful for the communities we serve. Um, and it also looks at placing Black artists and curators and cultural workers in a broader network that offers a rich context for their work. So that has been, I think, something I'm really passionate about. And we've also been doing a lot of work connecting Canadian artists and Black Canadian artists, Black Canadian curators with international networks as well. So we've been doing projects with Black History Month Milan, Black History Month Florence, which are two of the largest Black arts organizations in Italy, bringing artists from Italy to connect with artists in Toronto, but also bringing Black Canadian artists to Italy to do projects there and kind of build that dialogue, as well as Contemporary which is an organization that has one of the most extensive digital art history archives, a searchable archive as well, and kind of having conversations there about how Black artistic contributions are represented in those sorts of archives and how they can be more accessible and searchable. So those are some exciting projects that are in the works.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm resonating with this idea of the ecosystem, right? I'm resonating with this idea of like sustainable Black artists and arts organizations within a Black arts ecosystem, but within a larger ecosystem. And I'm really also curious about this idea of what you mentioned about understanding the ecosystem. I think it's such a missing piece when speaking with funders or thinking about the work that we do not intricately understand the impact of underfunding or under-resourcing, the impact of working, creating within that sort of Black arts ecosystem. And I think regionalization is one of those things. So I'm going to actually invite Thandiwe and Wunmi to respond to this question around how does like the geography and the region in which you live impact the arts practices that you do and the ways in which you create? Because I think, we know most of the Black population exists in Ontario, and then following by Quebec. But I think it's even more challenging for organizations like Wozo Africa or like Thandiwe, where they're working and access and how far they are from other activities happening with Black arts. And so I'm just inviting you to come in. We'll start with Thandiwe first and just, speak to what that regionalization and regional isolation means for the work that you're able to do.
Yeah, thank you. I love this conversation. Travel, 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 and then me just saying travel 500 times. When I co-founded the New Brunswick Black Artists Alliance, uh, where is the membership? My vice president at the time, I was interim. I was never the full president. I just like to put that on the record. And we had a gig with the local health authority where we traveled around to all the hospitals it was a commissioned photography gig. And every single town or city we went into, we'd go into an art gallery or a little pub that had some artwork that they'd sell on the wall, and we would look for the black artwork and walk up to the owner and say, "Hey, who painted that?" And they're like, "Oh, that's this." They have a card. Then we'd have to email that person and say, "Hey, every year, February, at the Gallery on Queen, we have a local art show. Would you like to be a part of it?" And we got like one person per city till we could get 12 people for an art show. But we're working and paying our own jobs doing that and having to look for where all of these siloed black artists are because they're just interconnected with their local rural networks, and they're not coming to New Brunswick. Has three major cities: St. John, Fredericton, and Moncton. That's 50% of our population in New Brunswick. All the rest are urban. They don't travel into town for nothing but groceries. So when it comes to art ecosystem, which is a fantastic term, we had to go find them because they were comfortable just putting out things on the walls and making a few money there. And we had to say, okay, this is about grants. We can get you regular shows. These shows you can go to other cities with. The whole existence of the professionalization of Black artistry when you're in these rural silos and getting into the local community center is just like the sun shining on you on like a cold day is it's rough. So not only do you have to go out looking for your team and your brothers and sisters, but you have to let them know this is only the beginning. And we got to move now we have a group show. Now we have to take that to other cities. We don't even go west. We haven't even made it to Ontario. We're still pushing stuff around in New Brunswick. So the regionality is is really about building that digital community and turning that into in-person meetings and events. And that's so key because it's in person that you have these conversations and people are confident to ask the questions of, "Hey, I saw you got a grant. Could you show me how to do that?" They're not emailing a Canada Council professional officer to have that conversation. That's us. We do that in person over chamomile tea. So travel, travel, travel.
Wow, thank you so much, Sandiwe. Really valid points there. For me, firstly, I would like to acknowledge the reality of funding, especially in Alberta. Arts funding is limited and highly competitive. Small organizations like Wazo Africa are often competing with the same pool of grants. Cultural, diverse organizations also frequently facing the same racial and systemic barriers with funding systems that tend to favor mainstream or Eurocentric models of art. This makes long-term planning difficult and also regional growth more challenging. The organization has been around since 2006 as a social enterprise, working in a non-for-profit and a charitable status, basically sector. So stability has been an issue, trying to get core funding and expansion. Another thing I want to mention is the infrastructure. The capacity of challenges in Calgary, affordable rehearsal spaces, exhibition venues, smaller studios is really hard to access and secure because we're not Toronto, so we don't have an abundance and different areas to be able to access this if it's not available. If it's not available, you use whatever you can, whether it's a basement, whether it's the library, whether it's a school gymnasium, whatever you can find, you use to be able to support your work. And regionalization also requires administrative strength. You have to have staff who can manage partnerships, marketing, touring, logistics, grant writing. All of that, specifically for Black arts organization, is very difficult, and it really impedes regional growth. So just in all, it's not simple living in Alberta. It's not simple because of lack of infrastructure, undervaluation of cultural specific work, the network issues. You don't have the network that you should have to be able to build and grow. So you're constantly trying to build capacity in that region, as well as also being able to be allowed to just be, right? We're a Black-led organization. We just want to be and be able to communicate and bring our community together in a way that we're sustaining our art. But that's an issue because funding is not non-existent sometimes. We're also always trying to find a way to be able to support the work. And what we've been doing, being a social enterprise, just to kind of circle back, is having partnership with intermediaries. Like Inside Out Theater is a deaf and disability arts organization, has nothing to do with Black people, but because they probably feel the same way we feel in terms of systemic issues, we partnered up with them so that when we're applying for grants, they also understand. And plus, one of their staff member is a lover of Ways to Africa, and they're a deaf and disabled filmmaker. So it really helps to also have that tie-in into the organization to support our work. And we have an MOU for 10 years. So it's really difficult when those organizations and those ecosystems do not understand the value that we bring as an artistic expression to the city.
Thank you. Wow. Oof. Now we're cooking now. Now, man, we put some good log under that stove there. We grease the pot. We throw in some seasoning, and we in at the thing right now. What's really interesting? I'm just gonna offer these things back. I'm hearing this idea where professionalization looks differently for Black arts and Black artists across the country, Black arts organization. So what also may be considered quote unquote artistic merit and professional looks different for Black arts practices that exist in communities, that exist with youth and exist with parents and all these particular things. And that I think is not understood contextually in the sort of systems in which we also are applying to and or working with, right? Because professionalism for so many years means so many things. You work in a studio space if you're a dance company, you work in a theater but what about that? What about that community space? And why then is that not as equally important as a space for artistic expression, as a studio where nobody sees you do the work and create the work and interact with it until it's done? And so I'm putting this forward because I think Black arts across the country is functioning and creating and working differently. That sometimes is not understood contextually for what it could potentially be. The knowledge of Black arts practices was also mentioned. And I think, you say Black arts, I happen to be a dancer. If you say Black dance, you assume the same things. And you're like, no, it's actually beautifully different aesthetically based on how those artist directors or the creators approach their work. Why then is one way understood contextually? It's different based on also where those persons are coming from to create the work and their approaches to the work. And I think that's also sometimes something that's problematic and challenging in many parts of the sector. Infrastructure. Oh, that one there. Because nobody know. I mean, we'll circle back to a big project that I know Band is going through right now, and the ways in which Band has been looking through this idea of like network and structure and scaffolding and all these particular things. But I think these are the things that's resonating with me, right? Like in Toronto, Band's space and Nia Center will be the only two space specific to Black artistic expression. If I be that person, how many other spaces exist in the I want to also just shout out Lata Pada, who's here to go off script because I can, who's been a dear supporter of CPAMO from the very beginning. Lata Pada, who works primarily in contemporary South Asian forms, who has worked tirelessly on the equity conversation and has a space in Mississauga, Sampradaya Dance. She's probably shaking her head right now going, yep, Infrastructure and access and ability. But I wouldn't be me if I don't understand the idea of bigging up other people within the community as well. You mentioned social enterprise. And I'm smiling and I love it because I think Black arts should be seen across the country as a social enterprise, not a creative enterprise, a social enterprise that is involving both the business, the entrepreneurial, the community, the social well-being, and all those things in between. It's going counter to what funding and also some structures um, think about and look like. But I think that's also an interesting potential for the future, as we have evidenced in Workland Center in Calgary as an example, and others who are looking at bridging community funding, arts, and also social enterprise into one particular space. But I want to invite Onika into the conversation with this question, like, why are strategic conversations with Black artists and Black arts organizations important for funders from your particular perspective?
Yeah, good question. I think for what's most important is just understanding not all funders are the same. So what Ontario Arts Council or Canada Council for the Arts does is totally different to Toronto Arts Council and how we operate. You spoke about, just even artistic merit for an application. My program in itself differs from other programs within Toronto Arts Council. So even when we're looking at the application, having a conversation with a program manager like myself, you would understand that the process that happens just to have the right person sitting on that panel to review your application helps you strategize how to position your application. When you're applying to a non-Black granting fund, we typically over-educate what we do and why it's important to community and why it's artistic. You assume so many things that they may be thinking when they're reading your application. When you're applying to the Black Arts program, I always tell everyone, skip that. Like, trust the process, trust that you're going to have people on the panel understanding your art form. And if they don't, they understand the diversity of being Black, so everyone's going to do their due diligence to, do their research beyond your application to understand, what you're presenting. The other thing I would say is just how to strategize. Everyone that I talk to, I want to, I'm working with you to make sure that your application is set up for success. Whether you get it or not, as long as I have a number of applications that are meeting the artistic merits and they're scoring high, and if it's a case of I just don't have the budget to fund all these projects, at least it helps me make a case. It helps TAC make a case for why we need more funding, especially for the Black Arts program. So again, I want to see everyone win, whether it's with Toronto Arts Council. I often also encourage other people, look at who else is other organization and artists within the city. What are they doing? Tandua, you made a great example of like having conversations with people who are having successful applications. Toronto Arts Council, we also partner with Neighborhood Arts Network. They provide a mentorship program that actually provides pre-application support from Black artists who have been successful. So having a conversation, especially with me who running I can let you know what other resources are available to you. Accessibility, we have an accessibility grant. A lot of the things that you wouldn't know unless you're actually on the website or you hear from somebody, it's available to you. So it's always good to have a conversation with the program manager, understanding how to position your application in terms of even outreach. And what does accessibility look like? Just to have a good understanding so you could position your application to be successful and have the best chances possible. And even if you don't get the grant, again, reach out to program managers. I give feedback. Not all funders provide feedback. Black Arts program, we provide it. Get the feedback from your peers who are looking at your application. Adjust, reapply. We're a rolling deadline. You don't have to wait till next year to apply again. Get the feedback, adjust. There's opportunities, especially with the Black Arts program at Toronto Arts Council. You could apply to us. You could apply to a strategic grant. You could apply to a discipline grant. That's 3 grants within 1 calendar year. So again, I'm going to encourage, always reach out to your program manager, ask questions. This is what I would like to do. This is my long-term goals for my organization or me, myself. And at least from my angle, Toronto Arts Council, I could support you, but hopefully others, with that kind of responsibility, they're doing the same thing as well.
Thank you. And I love this idea, but also the panel and assessment criteria is from a very culturally specific perspective, which I think is equally missing and is so important, right? And as you say that, and as you work for an organization, I know you don't, you also do stuff with youth, and I'm also thinking about those particular gaps, right? Having that particular knowledge of like, if I'm only going to apply to the community arts program to fund my youth training program, why not it? Why is it not funded from a professional standpoint? And I'm using this to also then invite Wumi to talk about how you develop the Black Arts Youth Program that you have for WOZO, but how you also intersect not just teachers who are trained in a particular specific form, but also how you also intersect the professional aspects within that for the participants. So Wumni, what is the significance of engaging youth in Black arts practices?
The youth are our future. And being in Canada 33 years, mainly in Alberta, Edmonton, and Calgary, if I was not engaged in the arts, I would probably be lost as an African, as a Nigerian. And it was very important for me because I knew I wanted to have children to know who I was so that I can pass and dispense that information to my children. And I have been teaching classes, I've been performing for decades, and decided, it shouldn't just end at me. I should be able to also impede this information to the youth and help them to also culturally know who they are. Being in a dancer and being in different dance studios, learning jazz and hip hop, they don't really tell you where the dances come from. They just say, here's hip hop, my name is so and so, let's go and play the music, you dance and you leave there sweaty. But then why aren't we able to learn about the specific name of the movement, what created it? It should be a part of storytelling in the dance class. And I had an issue with that. And I would ask the teacher, what was this dance move? I don't know. Where did this come from? I don't know. So I was like, okay, let me do some research. So there was some research done, which I mentioned Unganisha earlier, on where these art forms came from. And as I was digging and digging, and it was a lot of digging, Kevin. It's like they wanted to erase the knowledge. When I'm saying we have to pay the depositories to be able to access this information for this production to give a clear indication of where these dance forms came from. So you're sitting in the theater, you're watching clips from 1600s showing tap dancers and why, the minstrels, and all this information that is not easily made available. And it's very, very clear that they don't want us to continue to hold that power of who we are. So this Black Arts Development Program, it comes in different, sections. We have theater and film, we have dance, visual arts, media, music, and mentorship. And it's training and development. And since 2021, this will be our 6th year, we've been doing this program, and we've seen the impact in the youth specifically. We've seen them understand who they are, carry that power. This is right after school ends. School ends in Calgary in June. So they have 3 weeks in July, and they have about 6 dance instructors coming from the Caribbean, parts of Canada and the US, sometimes even Europe. We had somebody come from Amsterdam at the time. And this helps them to see that there are people who look like them teaching this specific style of dance and empowering them. and they can ask you a question. And because you are a knowledge keeper, you have to answer the question. And if you remember, myself and Nicole, who is the program coordinator, would interview each instructor and we'll just vet them questions. There was one time we had a step dance instructor, and step dance comes from South Africa, Gombu dance, right? Gombu dance is what created step dance. We know that. We've done the research. So we're asking the step dance instructor. So I was like, can I ask you a question? What did step dance come in? He said the answer accurately, because I've had, access to other step dance organization, and I'll ask them, and they're like, it comes from, the what do you call them? HSBO. You know what I'm talking about?
HBCU.
HSBCU.
HBCU. And I'm like, are you sure? What about before that? They're like, no, that was it. It was just brought over by who? Like, and they couldn't answer the question. So I'm like, there is a misinformation there. And by the way, when I went there, it was for one of this Black conference in Toronto a few years ago. And they were teaching a bunch of youth, and they could not tell the youth where this dance come from. So the youth is living with whatever they've given to them, and they're all Black youth, by the way. So I was really torn, and I was very disappointed. But our program is unique in the way that we are arming this Black youth during the summer month to be able to have arts education with their people that look like them, with instructors that look like them, to develop and help them to be able to understand who they are. One youth, I think it was a 2022 program. His name was Kiran. Basically came up to us and said, this is the first time I feel good being Black. You're 14, first time? And I said, why? And he said, because I know who I am. I'm empowered with this information. It gives me the confidence to be able to boldly say I'm Black. What I see in the media makes me feel bad for being Black. So it's really helpful to be able to have a space for us, a space to cultivate knowledge and be able to, like, when Kevin came, Kevin has done what he needed to do. He had fun with the youth. And what we get with the instructors too, they like, this has never happened before, that we have a space like this for youth to learn. Like, it's new to us, and we have people coming from all over the place, and they feel invigorated with that being there. And the youth are very interested, and the youth will go and Google their name, look at what they've done, come back the next day and be like, you did this, this, and this with this person. Why? And they're challenging the instructors. They're not just there just to learn. They're also wanting fellowship with them. So that's very key. And to date, we've had over 76 performances, because every Friday, the youth will perform to their parents and board members from the Saturday Jazz Dance Work, which is one of the beautiful spaces for dance in the city, and have access to showcasing the genre of dance. Sometimes they even speak about the genre of dance, because the instructor has, autonomy to create whatever they want to create. And the parents are just shocked. My child doesn't talk, now the child talks. Wow. This really emboldened my child. And we love that. Having 26 partner organizations supporting it, investing to $340,000 into artists and mentors for free. This is a free program. Everything is high class, because we want the kids to know that, yes, we are of excellence, and we want to bring that out so the community also knows. So thank you so much for that question. And it really helps me, because I've seen so many of the youth come in and out of the program, and some of them are touring with, the Caribbean dancers of Calgary, Deepak, which is a youth dance company. And they're using whatever they're learning from our program to embody themselves and get themselves into a different sphere of performing and build that knowledge. And whatever they're learning, we're hoping that they're also giving that knowledge back to their community members, their family members, etc. So the resources that we're providing is something that's nourishing and is helpful to ensure that our generation to come are prepared for whatever comes their way.
Thank you. And what's resonating, I've been hearing a lot, are two things. Training in the arts. And I say that because I'm one of those who work and intersect with the academic sphere a lot. And I'm like, okay, where are these techniques and classes taught in university spaces where training for the next generation of artists are in a country that's diverse like ours, but we're not favoring the Black arts practices? In a country where there are people I can call into this room to honor them and their work. Bakari I. Lindsay has a codified, trademarked technique around dance that does not exist in any spaces called universities. where sometimes there are two that I know of specifically in Toronto, Lua Cheyenne and Arsenio Andrade, who are doing work with TMU, where the others in certain spaces that are doing work specific to Black techniques in dance or Black theatrical approaches in universities. And so you're hitting a very, very good point. I will come to Thandiwe with around this idea later, but I want to bring in Claudia because the information about space keeps coming up and the information about actually where we are, the expanse of the work that we're doing across the country is coming up. And I'm inviting you, Claudia, to speak about your key findings or the process that you went through in mapping Black arts organizations in Ontario and that particular initiative. I will drop the link to the infographic of where that is in as well, so that way those who are unfamiliar in the chat or in this conversation and online with us can actually begin to explore that for themselves. Claudia.
Yeah, so kind of to go back to what you were talking about a little bit before I talk about the map. Band has our own space. We have a space in Toronto in Parkdale that we're renovating, which is unique and special, but also a have been around building organizational capacity, improving financial security, space, and infrastructure. And then one of the other ones that kept coming up was creating and sharing a narrative around Black arts in Canada. Um, and so one of the ways that we thought we could take action on this is by creating this map of Black arts organizations in Ontario, and hopefully, like I said about the convenings, hopefully this will continue to grow and expand. And it also includes a directory of resources. So the purpose of this was, again, thinking about how we are contributing to sustaining and building a strong Black arts ecosystem. But also was really thinking about as well visibility. I think one of the things that uh, is a challenge is marketing. I think especially a lot of the organizations that we're having these conversations with, including band, the priority is not necessarily the marketing aspect. I mean, Thandiwe, what you were doing and like getting that, travel and that actual like on the ground outreach is incredible. Um, it's difficult, you got you have so much to do in terms of program delivery, in terms of like organizational maintenance and operations, that marketing is sometimes something that you don't have the resources as much to invest in. So having that shared resource that can be kind of highlighting what's going on, um, both to amplify, but also to think about continuity as well. So one of the conversations we've had, I think, with many people here is also thinking about how things can get lost. So things like Band has in our resource library, we have a number of resources that are from organizations that have since closed, like Canbaya. Band has their Salafi 97 publication, which is something that is not like it's not accessible online. So how do we ensure that people can access resources like that and also then carry that knowledge forward of organizations and the work they were doing and what artists were doing in Canada, across Canada, um, since they're since we've been here. So this map is kind of a way to start to centralize or find a way to disseminate that information, and also kind of find a way to acknowledge, again, going back to what Kevin was saying about ideas of success or what success can look like, find a way to acknowledge also the many different ways and initiatives um, of Black artists and Black curators and Black cultural workers. So it's not just including, brick and mortar spaces, or it's not just including theaters, dance companies, galleries. It's also including people that are having a different approach to curatorial initiatives, or folks that are focus specifically on animation, things that maybe kind of get siloed or isolated or maybe sidelined in conversations about Black artistic expression, or lost in terms of the way that we tend to categorize. So also finding ways to bring those organizations into the center as well and into the conversation. Um, and have the general public be able to find these organizations, but also importantly, having other Black artists and curators and arts workers be able to find these organizations and these art services and these resources as well.
Thank you. The arts worker piece. It's a whole nother piece, right? How do Black arts workers across the country walk into spaces and do the work that they need to do? How are they empowered and supported through funders, through other artists and arts organizations, to other arts workers across the country to do the work that they need to do, knowing that it's varying across the regions and varying, but also still connected to, again, um, this idea of this sense of, I mean, talking like it is, the idea of being under-resourced in comparison and being compared to organizations that has way more resources historically than Black funded arts organizations. So I think that's a really important piece. I have two, Thandi, where I want to just, if you could just come in briefly to talk about why is it important to begin to think differently through what community arts practice is, what a professional arts practice is, and also intersecting that through academia and education, and the role that we spoke about around like really documenting that Claudia is also mentioning, documenting the histories and work of Black arts and Black artists across the country.
Yeah, thank you for the question. A fantastic conversation we're having. I have so many notes. Uh, one, we have to keep our artist practice as a spoken word poet in, the poet corner of Canada. I can assure you that there's no other spoken word poet. It is what they call page poets, and we have to show up and be who we are in that space, regardless of how how much pressure that is on us. Two, the importance of documenting this. We need something to pass on to the next generation. Wumi, I just adored your chat about the importance of youth and this whole conversation about like Black arts being the playground for Black identity. I think that's key to the ecosystem. I really do. I mean, we all know I was giving a talk at the base and they were kind of hitting me with why is Black History Month important? And I'm like, don't pretend like you only hear about Black people in February. We're always in stereotype in the news. Like I can only speak for New Brunswick, but our public schooling youth are the highest to be suspended, are the highest dropout rates, are the highest to be incarcerated. You see us throughout CBC on all of these negative things. Like we need a month to be positive. And I think if we reach these different populations with art, we know heritage heals. The studies have been done at post-secondary that if you learn about your culture, your grades go up. You feel more focused, you feel more confident. And art just happens to be the best delivery system. So when we're thinking about how do we engage this from a political sense, I prefer your framing, Kevin, is that we use this art as a social enterprise and we say art first. We need a Black arts group at every university campus before the Black Student Union group because the Black arts groups comes with the community, the collective acting, the teaching, the accessibility. We already incorporate those things with our arts practice. We've never separated them, but there's these walls that we think we have to change it and call it something else. And now we got to be a caucus. And now we got to be, a union. But the Black arts methodology has always been holistic to the Black culture and community. It's always been healing. It's always been friendly. It's always brought people in. It's been mentoring and teaching and wanting to lift them up. And the fact that we're not in these spaces because our forms of dance, our forms of poetry, our forms of shooting films and storytelling just isn't what the Eurocentric view is quite ridiculous. And I think if we want to increase the mental health and capacity for the next generation so our current generation doesn't keep facing this burnout and we can build friends and capacity in this national Black arts ecosystem, we have to be ourselves in all these spaces. So
Thank you. But wait, what cook? I'm a cook or you a cook? Yeah, stir the pot, my friend. You are stirring the pot. Thank you. Thank you. And I think you're hitting a really, really important point, and I want to invite Onika to come in to share on, which is mentorship, right? Which is how do we then mentor at all the levels of the Black arts social enterprise? So that way it is successful in the future. Onika, thank you so much, Thandiwe.
Yeah, I'm gonna tap on this from a personal side and a professional side. So I'll answer from the professional side within Toronto Arts Council, but again, not sure everyone knows, but the Black Arts Program does offer $5,000 additionally to your project to have a mentor to help you develop skills to facilitate your project. So again, taking advantage of the opportunities, I think, yeah, we know how to be artists, but it's like, how do you be an arts administrator? How do you develop those hard skills so that yes, on paper you are looking good, or you're developing your resume or CV that it's transferable skills going into other spaces. So taking advantage of these resources that are available, as again with Toronto Arts Council, your mentor does not have to be Black. We trust it's a trust-based process. So if you think someone who is non-Black is beneficial to your career development, apply for the 5,000. I don't see enough applications with this checked off when they're applying. Um, it's free money. It's not a case of, hey, the panelists are gonna look at your application and say, they're asking for 5,000, let's just give them 1,000 towards mentorship. It is literally a conversation of, did the artist provide enough information regarding who the mentor is? What is the work plan behind the mentorship? And, of course, paying the mentor and paying yourself, making sure all those things are taken care of. But once it's a yes, you get the full 5,000, right? And then it helps you develop a relationship with someone that I'm pretty sure, just my own personal experience, they will continue supporting your development as you continue to grow beyond the project. On a personal thing, and I loved what you were saying when you were talking about your mentorship program. I think sometimes we look at mentorship and we're only looking at how we're developing somebody as an artist. But I want to come back to Kevin because being in Scarborough Caribbean Youth Dance Ensemble, we know as a black person or creative, like we don't call that mentorship. Being in a village, being in a program, it's a part of us. It's what we do, culturally. And I never realized until I went to school, going back to do my master's, was like, oh, this is what you're calling mentorship. And although Kevin, I'm sure you weren't, it wasn't part of your development plan for all of us. You were just like, let me pass on this knowledge of dance to a next generation of dancers. But within my dance journey, it really helped me develop my own dance program, my own dance organization, and luckily applying to an organization like Vibe Arts, who was able to see me and say, hey, I see what you do within community. Can you come and do the same thing in this organization that's getting, thousands and millions of dollars of funding to be the artistic director? So I'm just sharing my personal journey, especially for any artist that's on the call. We have to start learning how to be okay with entering those kind of spaces with the journey that we have. We don't have to go to school. We don't have to get a degree to get into certain of leadership. There are going to be people, you have to trust whether you believe in God or the universe, you have to trust that your people will find you and you are going to end up in spaces that are meant for you. I spent 8 years being the artistic director of Vibe Arts, only to now transition into Toronto Arts Council again with my lived experience being centered within my position. And who knows where I'm going to go from here, but I always valued, again, the mentorship and the guidance of like Kevin, where yes, you are in those spaces and you're the imposter syndrome and you're thinking like, am I supposed to be here? And you have a Kevin or whoever's a part of your community, you're going to hear them literally, whether they're physically in front of you or they're not, you're going to hear that voice tell you, yes, you know how to do community engagement when they're asking you, hey, can you get the word out about this program? Can you do outreach? You know how to do that. You already have the relationships. We have to remember we're the prize when we enter into these spaces. They're not hiring us just because we're Black. They're hiring us because we know how to be within community and build their network and build their community. That's all I want to say. Just adding the little seasoning in there.
Wow, I feel proud in this moment. Thank you so much. I think what you're bringing back to the forefront of my mind, I've always said a lot, is Black arts or Black mentorship and leadership looks different, and it's supposed to because it's based specific on Black things. And I, at 17, as you mentioned, was I was not just a director or a co-director of something that I was like, what? But it brought me into my creative leadership in leading a company right now, right? And so it wasn't also packaged around we're doing arts leadership. It was literally being held by a community, held by parents, by the visionaries of that organization to begin to move something forward. That was both all the things that are being mentioned, right? Amplifying community, amplifying culture, also providing space, but also understanding what that meant on a Saturday to be in community, to understand the cultural identity of something for which I, quite frankly, in Jamaica, did not necessarily even really associate with as much as I should have, but we won't talk about that sort of conversation. So I want to say thank you. I'm going to provide for the next short period of time space for Allison to come in and be our reflector or sessional archivist or Black archivist. And she's going to also just share some of the wealth of knowledge that we've been speaking about as well. Allison.
I just really want to take a moment to hold space for the dialogue we just had. In my work, I always think about the ways in which our lineages, our histories come to the fore, how they present in the contemporary. And to have this conversation, to be in this moment where we're able to have this conversation is powerful in and of itself, particularly for Black histories in the past and that are ongoing into the future. And so I just really appreciate this moment to listen to you all from your varied, nuanced, and intersectional perspectives of not just what the state of Black arts in Canada is, but what it can be and how we can make that happen. One of the things that stand out from this particular conversation that I was hearing across a lot of these answers is how this space, this digital infrastructure for dialogue, has allowed us to move beyond constructed colonial disconnect from one another. And how we're having these conversations, not just across the country, but across histories, and how we're unwinding and unbinding ourselves from a colonial legacy of oppression that's hindered us from growing, from expressing ourselves, from finding our identities. Thandi, one of the things that you said that really resonated with me was Black arts as a playground for Black identity. I'm like Anika in many ways, where I think about my own history and how it comes into play into every conversation that I'm having. And if we think about the ways in which the arts has not just allowed us access to ourselves and to community, but to futurities that we couldn't even imagine, that's such a powerful outcome of this conversation. We are here to strategize. We have the ability to think beyond particular binaries and create collectively. And what that means for me, particularly as someone that is more on the side of being a youth, is I can now visualize my future, feel it in this space, how it may manifest, how it would look for me, right? And so thinking about some of the key themes that come out of this is one, thinking about ourselves as foundational to the modern world, right? I think back to the conversation we've had about dance. We are the blueprint for the world that we live in right now. And we need to, as much as we can, recognize that within ourselves and build on that work. I think about now strategy through this conversation. Where do we go from here? How do we build? What are the contemporary needs of our communities across the nation, whether that be New Brunswick or where I come from, Victoria, where there isn't a lot of Black infrastructure, to think about what work needs to be done now so that dialogue then turns into something tangible. So that's another beautiful outcome of this conversation. And lastly, I'll just say that within this capacity building, we've built another community out of it. There's folks I don't know on this call that I now know that I feel like I can reach out to, talk to, um, and think about ways that we can collaborate across difference to learn and grow with one another. So that's just some of the key outcomes I take away from this conversation. I'll pass it back to you, Kevin, if you would like to add on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm besides myself. That's all I can say. Thank you so much. And I want, because our next session at 2:30 will be around visualizing projects, right? And I want for us, and if you want anyone, put up your hands, you want to come on and say something, but I want first to throw out words, throw out ideas, throw out things as we end in the next 4 minutes. And if you have questions, we have space for about 3 or 4 questions from anyone who's been listening. You can show the questions into the chat. You could DM me personally, but I want first to amplify the chat room space with ideas. That could be Black philosophies. That could be, I know for me with my company, I have one around Sankofa. You have to understand the past and question what you're doing before you can create something in the future. So you're always circling back on the trajectory of who you are and your experiences. Amplify the chat with thoughts, with visualizing ideas, with plans. Throw it out. And if you do want to share it vocally, put up your hand. We'll get you included in this. If you have a question as well for any of the panelists, this is the moment and time for it. I hope to give us or a 10 minute or so just to break before the next session starts. And if you have anyone out there who is an artist, an arts organization who want to get support in visualizing their next projects and partnerships, that will be the workshop process for you. And I invite everybody to stay for it as well. Oh, that should be Sankofa. Mm-hmm. It takes a village. Coming from oral tradition, it's important that we keep speaking our truths and our history so that it's not just a moment that is heard, but that it resonates through space, time, and youth. Ubuntu. Continue building community through art making and art practices. And in this spirit of community, I want to big up Kai Ma, who is the chair of Dance Immersion, but who embedded arts in education through the TDSB, through many of his years supporting teaching and learning from a Black arts African diasporic educational perspective. Silence is also conversation. You have to be conversing with your mind No matter how you think about it, you have to converse with yourself and your mind. All right, panelists, any last words, any last things you want to share? I think for me, I've been resonating with this idea of doing more to support Black arts leaders and artists across the country. I call myself a Black artist of privilege, and I've been thinking about how within my time frames, actually begin to think about what that looks like across the country. I see here in the chat importance of adapting to different modes of sharing history for generations to come. I see a question here. What are some challenges and opportunities for Black artists to work with and in schools beyond Black History Month? If anyone have any ideas and thoughts they want to share that based on your own experiences of work.
I can share.
Sure.
2007, our organization has done Africa is not a country, it's a continent. So that's the name of the program. We have arts and crafts, song and dance, and tales and storytelling. And we have gone around over 28,000 schools nationally with over 400 schools, 28,000 students and educators nationally with over 400 schools. Going in there and showcasing the importance of Africa in the ecosystem of the world when it comes to ethnicity, the food, the topography, the animals, things that can bring people's minds, specifically kids age kindergarten to grade 12, about the potency of the African continent and how it's the second largest continent in the world. So we want to make sure that they understand that 54 countries hold this, and that came from that West African dance situation. As a West African person that was born in Nigeria, the West African dance is a term. Then people just think that that's what it is, but West Africa has 18 countries. So we wanted to expand people's minds so they can understand that Africa is not a country, it's a continent.
Yeah, and I would also add, I veer away from Black History Month, not because it's not important, but because, like I say, I'm Black 365 days of the year. And I think the offerings that I have is how, as the question is, how do you market it? How do you present it as an important part of education and in education systems beyond Black History Month? Because I think Kai can probably agree with me here that there are many ways in which the education system is not supporting Black youth over the entire year. And so you can't just now bring in something, oh, here you go, you're represented for a month, and suddenly the world is in your school is now completely different, So there's also that. I see here a comment, such an important and potent conversation, building resilience and strengthen community. I often think about whether I am deconstructing the master's house using the master's tools, or I'm using new tools apart from oppressive histories. Very, very good conversation around decolonization and that particular work. I see raised hands. I know Claudia had her hand up, and then I see Onika's hand up. And Kai, I can always invite you in to share if you choose to after. Claudia.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, kind of adding on, I mean, we're all Black all the time. But I think band's relationship, which I think has been really fruitful with schools, has been to invite them into our programming regardless of the month. So we do a lot of like school tours of exhibitions. So the focus not necessarily being on the fact that they're engaging with Black art, but the fact that the artist is Black is part of it. So I think like what our framing has been is not that this is something that is different or other, or it's the same as going to the AGO. It's not like something that is only done in February, and this is not something that needs to be like an additional or separate experience, but more about especially like young kids, if it's a school that is, you know a group of 12-year-olds, they're not necessarily framing it in a way that it is separate or different. And I think that has been really interesting to speak with kids of like all these things are learned. So I feel like all these notes about how we're dismantling and unlearning is as part of that is also like relearning and encouraging a different perspective or a way of approaching something, which I think can very much be done through unique and artistic experiences.
Indeed, indeed. You know about maths because I'm a dancer, I could count. And if I count to eight, I must can go multiply that to what eight, four eights is what happened. You learn geometry through dance because guess what? You're looking at patterning on the floor that you move through space with. So I think there are many ways that we can see, as you mentioned, Claudia, that integration of arts and in particular Black arts philosophies and perspectives. If you've not seen CBC's thing. Oh my goodness. On Black, it was on a couple of years ago on Black Things where they talk about fractals and how the design of African villages led to algorithms in the way in which we understand the same things that exist within our computer structures, with the slashes and what is, oh my goodness, enslaved. Is it called slaved or enslaved? It's a CBC program that was specific to Black arts across the world. Onika,
Yeah, you were gonna say the same thing I was gonna say of just looking at the art as a form of education. And my strategy is always working with teachers because sometimes they don't know because they're not artists, but they enjoy it. They know the students enjoy when you do come in for Black History Month. So when my strategy is always, yes, teach the workshop during Black History Month, but then talking to the teacher and being like, this is actually could be in place for gym. This could be wellness. This could be, I know you get funding for your dance competition every year. Feel free to bring me in. Just finding different ways that I could come back in and showing the benefits to obviously the administration team of like how this provides transferable skills to the students. But outside of that, there is, if anyone's in Toronto, Prologue. That's what TDSB uses for artists to come into their spaces. But
thank you.
thanks again, Kevin. I shout out to you, CPAMO, for just creating this space. I love it. Like, what was mentioned before, Allison said it, like this is a community. My community has expanded. So thank you as well.
Thank you so much. Kai, you want to say something before we close? I'm mindful that we're going to go on a break until 2:30, but I see you came on like you were just like, yeah, I want to say something. So come in and say something, no man.
Uh, Well, thank you again. I want to echo how important creating this space is. And uh, in terms of history, sorry, the schools that I were involved with wasn't actually TDSB. I did work for TDSB, but we actually created independent African-centered schools for children here in Toronto. It's an unknown history. It was recognized by the Ministry of Education, but the power of it was that we use arts as a tool for decolonizing all of our minds. And it was a powerful vehicle for children in terms of seeing themselves. And one of the most powerful things we did was we created our own holidays. So we took days off based on our own ancestors. What comes to mind is, although we're closed in August, I mean, we had Marcus Garvey Day, we had Nat Turner Day, and we made these institutional holidays, but it was inspired by the arts. So I just wanted to say that it was the arts that allowed us the free flow of thinking and liberation that allowed us to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that idea of free flow and liberation, I will encourage a break for the next 5 to 6 minutes, and then we'll return with the latter half of it, which is about visioning projects for Black creatives.